Hello everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, The Matrix Game of Life. Today I want to cover two things. Number one, I want to spend a few minutes doing a little bit of, just a little bit, a review of certain phrases that I saw that were in my last video, in the Sufi Sutra that was written by the Prophet Muhammad. When I looked at my own video, I said, you know, there's some words in there that are really going to confuse people perhaps. And I just want to make a short clarification, and I've picked out one sentence to do it. And yes, it has everything to do with the Matrix Game of Life. Everything. Secondly, I want to talk about what is collectively being perceived as the coronavirus. And just exactly what that has to do with the game that we are playing. I'll have some things to say about that. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to my artificial intelligence. I get a kick out of that, I do. And then I'll be right back and we'll dig into things. All right, see you in a moment.
Hello, and welcome to the Matrix Game of Life. It is the generosity of viewers like you that makes this channel possible. If you find the information provided as being beneficial, please send a thank you gift. It will be much appreciated. A PayPal link can be found in the description section of all videos. May your Matrix experience be one of health and of prosperity.
Okay, here we go. As I said, welcome back, all viewers, subscribers. If you're new here, stick around, listen to what's said. It will either move you or it will not. Not everybody that comes across the channel is necessarily a source player. And that's to be expected. Source players are outnumbered in this dream that we are perceiving, that we perceive as life being lived on a planet called Earth, which I call the game board. And of which we are nearly thoroughly convinced that it is all reality. In actuality, the only thing that is reality about it is the illusion of it, the dream of the waking state. We have three states in the game: the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. And then we cycle back into the experience of the waking state. And for all intents and purposes, it appears that we are awake, running around, going to work, hugging our kids and our wife or our husband, doing the laundry, cooking, eating, the whole gamut. Is it any wonder that people who are playing this game, and those who aren't, if they should hear that they're not actually here, that it's all a dream, and they're somewhere else on another planet in another dimension, dreaming all of this, it's a hard thing to believe. That's why the first important key to escaping the matrix, this matrix game that we call life, the first key is to have the realization, the experience of knowing that we are indeed playing a game. From that point on, things can still seem very confusing, but now that your interest is piqued and more, we go on to learn and to start remembering exactly what is going on. Which leads us to the second main key. And I say there are two of them. I perhaps will discover others. But right now I'm limiting it to two. The first key is waking up, having the realization that you are playing a game and dreaming all of this. And the second one is coming to the understanding, the realization that you are Source. If I want to say it in a very dangerous way, because of religion, I would say having the realization that you are God. Ooh. You got to watch what you're saying like that. Well, not really. A source player should fear nothing. If the source player understands that they are a source, who or what could be against them? Nevertheless, it takes me into what I said I wanted to talk about to start out off with, and that's some clarification about the Sufi writing that was, well, Sufi influenced, I should say, Sufi influenced 13th century writing by the Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam, who certainly, as I said, he had dealings with the Sufis. They are mystics. They get into things that the world thinks are absolutely crazy. Now, let me open this up here, get it out of my way so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to put this up on the screen, full screen, so that you can read it. And I'm focusing on the text that I've colored red. That says, whosoever knows their self knows their source. That's how it starts out. So we're really only looking at 2 sentences. And it's the second sentence that I want to look at a little bit more closely, just to clarify any misunderstanding that you may have. Because, like I said, when I went back and looked at my own, when I proofed, so to speak, my own video, I thought, wow, some people are going to be very confused by that. Now, I shouldn't make that assumption. Maybe nobody's confused about it, which would be a terrific thing. It would be a terrific thing. That would mean that in this game, you had risen to a frequency level where it's been revealed, so to speak. It becomes a knowing. It becomes an infinite truth of, it is the answer to that old saying, know thyself. And that is the second key. That opens, it blows the game wide open, not all at once. It comes piecemeal. But what does come always fits. And then the bigger picture starts setting in. And I'm not even going to try to describe that. Well, actually, I already did in a past video. I didn't describe it in the detail that it was experienced, but I described it in a general manner to give the overall impression that maybe the hearer of my words could form an inner image, an inner vision, a little bit of the experience that I described, which is actually beyond description, to be quite honest with you. It would be really, really hard for me to put into words the experience of coming to the fullness, to the height, the width, and the depth, and the fullness of the knowledge that I am Source. I am that. And so are you. Just be willing to believe it. If I were to go to a church and say that, especially if it would have been in Salem in the 16th, 17th century, I'd have got burned at the stake. There have been men all through history, not just men and women. Excuse me, there have been men and women throughout recorded history that knew this. However, due to the localities that they lived in, or the country, or the overall mass religion of most of the residents of those communities, which could have been anything. It could have been Hinduism, it could have been Buddhism, it could have been Zen, it could have been Sufism, it could have been Christianity, like in Spain and England and France. It could have been Catholicism, like in Spain and England and France, many wars over that. Nobody, the authors of writings, could not come right out and say, you are source. They couldn't do that. They would have got crucified, burned at the stake, or thrown in jail, chained to the wall, until all that was left was a skeleton hanging there. It was heresy. In our religions today, it is still heresy in many religions. That's why I say I am not a religious person. I do not worship anything. There's nothing beyond what we are to worship. It's pretty simple, actually. Anyhow, I'm going to throw this up here, and we're going to talk about that sentence, and then I'll carry on. We'll pick up on the coronavirus thing. I have something to say about that, and I think you'll find it interesting. Okay, let me throw this up there. It says, because of this source said. Now that refers to the first three panels of things that were said that I had up in my last video. Source said. In other words, the Prophet Muhammad is perceiving this. It's like it's being understanding has set in. And he says, whosoever knows their self, knows their source. Source and self in this context are the same thing. Now, it's the second sentence that could really confuse people. Or not. All right, it says, what source pointed out is that you are not you, but you are source, and there is no you. You never were and never will be. Wow. It ought to surprise any of us that those words might confuse people, blow their mind. And this is what I wanted to point out about it. What Source pointed out is that you are not you. Now, what does that mean? The operative word right there is the word you. It's a word that we use all the time to communicate because there is no other word, at least, well, every language has a word for you. We're speaking English. You are not you. Well, if you are not you, what does that word mean? If you were ever to have studied the Eastern religions, and let's say somehow you came under the teachings of a guru, for lack of a better word. It's a word we're all familiar with. One of the things that he's going to talk about, the guru, he or she, one of the things they are going to talk about is what we call the separate self. Another word for the separate self is the ego. The separate self and the ego perceive the separate self, or call it the ego perceives itself as separate and apart from its creator, if it has religion in its life. People, and I'll give you an example of this, and I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't. Religious people who are operating at the level of ego, which is an illusion. Nevertheless, it's what they believe themselves to be, a person, a persona, a human being. That's what they perceive themselves to be. And you might say, well, naturally, that's what we are. Is it? Are you absolutely 100% convinced of that? Are you sure that that is eternal truth? The religious person, persona, personality, the expression of ego. You find that person at times, perhaps in church, perhaps at home, perhaps riding the subway, or sitting at their desk at work. They will pray. Prayer from all the prayers I've heard in my experience in this game, prayers are prayers for things or situational changes of some type. They are a plea to a God who they believe hears them, and if they are a good boy and girl, they believe that this separate God, it is separate from them. They believe that the God that they pray to or worship will answer their prayers or not answer their prayers. I'm not getting down on prayers. That's not why I'm explaining this. What I want to point out is that the separate self, the ego, who believes that it is separate and apart from a higher being, a being, is the source, that sense of separation is the source of all pain and suffering, fear, greed, lasciviousness, etc., etc. Disease. It is that separate self, the ego, that is being described when it is pointed out that you are not you. You are not a separate self. You are not an ego. You are not you, but you are Source. There are 3 word yous right there. 2 of them point to the illusion of a separate self, and the third, you, source player, you, source fractal, you, source cell, you, source self. Pick any word you like. You, the knower, are source. You are the knower of all experience. Experience is made of the knowing of it. Have you ever had an experience that you didn't know? Well, you may have if you were like you drank too much alcohol and were in a blackout. You may have had some experiences that you don't remember. That's all. Or you get knocked unconscious. In other words, the mind, what we call mind anyhow, but it kind of gets jolted into like, blackout. And then, hopefully, in a while, sometimes sooner, sometimes later, you wake up. What Source pointed out is that you are not you, but you are Source. And there is no you. The you that there is not, there is no you. That you is being, its context is the illusion of a separate self, perceiving yourself from the perspective of personality, all kinds of definitions. Your work, your profession, your title, your station in life, your marital status. The ego and the separate self defines itself as all these things. The biggest is being a body, what we call a flesh and blood body. That's another story. That's another story. That's just, you never were and never will be. Because the only existence is source. Source is all and all. Tell me, what part of all are you not? All right, that's all I'm going to say about that. I wanted to point these out because it's easily understood how those words could confuse anybody. Irritate some, make some say, that's crap. Total crap. Muhammad had no idea what he was talking about. Is it any wonder there was a manifestation called ISIS? Muhammad got it. He understood. If he authored this writing, he understood. He knew his self, his actual self. Whosoever knows their self knows their source. They are their source. You are the source of yourself. There's no gigantic being up there somewhere doing things. No. And as I've said before, we are not what we think we are. Now, hopefully some of us that are participating in this video have moved past that point, and this realization has come. It's an eternal truth, inalterable, unchangeable, unmoving. Consciousness. We, as, well, I shouldn't say we collectively are source, okay? I mean, okay. See, this is where words kind of like, they ruin the depth of what's, a lot of times what I can't say. Consciousness is aware. It is aware that it is aware. You are conscious, and you are aware of it. You are source, aware of the experiences that the activity of consciousness manifest. In this same writing, if you go toward the end of the writing, in frame 5 or 6, 7, I don't know, toward the end of it, it says there are no things. The things never were and never will be. We cannot refer to ourselves as a thing. Nor is Source a thing, which we and Source are the same. We are the same. Sometimes it's said we are the same thing. There are no things. Look, I'm getting a little bit too deep into this. I gotta cut myself off right here. I don't want to get into things and the activity of consciousness, which is the height of what we would call natural. There's no being up there making decisions about if you're going to heaven or you're going to hell, or keeping track of your sins and running the world, a separate being that creates things separate from himself, like the universe. No. But for now, it's enough that the seeds be planted, that Source pointed out that you are not you, but you are Source. And there is no you. There is no ego. There is no separate self. That is delusion. And it is highly involved in suffering. That sense of separation from yourself. That's why it's repeatedly said, know thyself. Okay. Whew. Having gotten that out of the way, I hope that may have clarified some things for you. My daughter, bless her soul, she's brilliant. In worldly terms, she's brilliant. I've known her all of her 30 plus years. I interact with her from time to time, and I've watched her insight develop. And she gets to that, her and I have discussions. She always starts them. She doesn't realize that, but she does. And I don't hold back. I talk to her exactly how I'm talking right here in this video. She'll listen, and I can tell when I've gone far enough that it's made her angry. Like suggesting to her that she at least consider that she is God. We get that far, ooh. My daughter, she's a pistol. You don't mess with her. And I think that she's in my game. She is a character in my game and put there especially to push my buttons. Because nobody that I have ever interacted with in my life is as good at it as she is. Many times after a phone call with her, we hang up, I got to sit there and I got to say to myself, emotional body, get back in line, get back in harmony, cool it, and join me. When I say me, I'm talking about the source fractal that I am. Join me on the frequency level upon which I currently dwell. We'll get into frequency levels in more detail as my videos continue. All right. I said a couple videos ago that we were going to get into the nuts and the bolts of how the game is played. We left off somewhere where we had just been put to sleep, our minds were wiped, memory was wiped, and we were hooked up to the demiurge, which I want to talk about in detail sometime down the road, the demiurge. There's so much I'd like to say about the game, but I'm going to try to keep it in focus in the perspective of the game. So anyhow, we were put to sleep, had our minds wiped, hooked up to the demiurge, which we created, programmed to feed us data that we dream as this. Oh, that's an easy thing to believe, isn't it? I've gone as far as to say that your actual physical body is on the physical plane of the primary matrix on the planet Saturn in the fifth dimension. Not the fourth, we're in the third dimension. The game dimension, the tough one. We are experiencing three-dimensional experiences, and they are rough for the most part. Sometimes they're not, but most times, well, you know, you're experiencing it too, or have experienced it. There we are, encased within our soul, which is our conscious body, our subconscious body, our emotional body. Did I miss anything? Conscious, subconscious, emotional, and the physical body that encases the soul. The physical body encases the soul encases the fractal. Now, here's an important thing about the soul and about how the game works. First, let me say, boom, we're born, we experience birth, infancy. We're born of a source player mother. If you're a source player, you're born to a source player mother. You can have a non-source player father, but your mother is always a source player. You cannot have a source player father and a non-source player mother. That doesn't work. The game has rules. That's how we designed it. That's how we designed it. There's a physical body on the physical plane of the primary matrix. This is the secondary. That body within that body is a soul. The body encases, the physical body encases that soul, and that soul encases us, the source fractal. Now, we've just entered the game. I want to talk about the soul for a minute. The source fractal. Let's say you are just coming to the realization that you are a source player. It is your soul, your emotional body, your conscious body, same thing, your subconscious body, your emotional body, and the physical body in which all of those are sleeping. That soul informs us, the fractal. It informs us of the experiences of the data. It's like the soul almost like unscrambles encrypted data. If that makes any sense to you. It informs the fractal that is within it. For the most part. If you are a source player and you just have come to the realization that you are a source player and that you're in a game, and if you have the intent to win the game, you will come eventually to understand. I'm going to explain it now, but you'll come to know it. That in a game, now you're dreaming this. The soul is also on the physical plane of the primary matrix. And your soul, was accumulated as you descended through the different densities and planes and dimensions of those planes and frequencies of those dimensions. Your soul was accumulated through experience. By the time we got to where we are now, not here in the dream, but on the physical plane of the primary matrix, the soul has been subject to conditioning through the experiences that got progressively denser, of lower frequency, and hard. And that dense, hard, conditioned soul is still informing the fractal within it. And the information the fractal is getting at this point is usually confusing, irritable, you're well acquainted with it, because you're having the experience of this game also, which is hard. It is difficult. We designed it that way. And so the things that the data that the soul is picking up and interpreting, so to speak, for the fractal within it, things seem rough. They seem rough. And that's the experience of the fractal. It's the experience of source. Difficulty, pain, suffering. We've come a long way, so to speak. We've never moved out of source, ever. There is no movement. This is all taking place where there is no time and space, actually. Not even a primary matrix. Remember, in the very beginning, I said that the primary matrix was created in source. Source is in the primary matrix and the game, secondary matrix. Source is in that, is all through it, and that's what everything is source. Including well, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. I see I'm getting up on 50 minutes already here. And I haven't even started talking about coronavirus. All right, I'll get into the soul. Remember, the soul informs the fractal that it encases. However, when you wake up to the game and you understand that you're dreaming, you're awake to the dream. It's at that point that you, eternal knowledge and wisdom and power, if you want to call it that, you, source fractal, you start informing the soul. And you tell it what you would like to experience. And it obeys. Because it didn't create you, you created it. You're the boss. If you want to call source, excuse me, if you want to call source the boss. So yeah, I'll tell that whole, I'll get more into the teaching about soul and how it informs or is informed. There's a big difference. It has a lot to do with what we sometimes refer to on a lower frequency level as free will. But here we are. The collective perception of the moment. Coronavirus. And it's freaking a lot of people out. Can't even get toilet paper. I'm not going to talk about coronavirus. It's a virus. Okay? We've had in the past, so to speak, if we're speaking in terms of linear time, we've had, and I wrote these down so that I didn't have to bother my memory. We had the Antonine Plague long ago. These are big things. They were huge viruses, plagues, pandemics. We had the Justinian plague, the bubonic plague, or the Black Plague. We had the third plague pandemic, typhus fever. That became big during the times of World War I and II. We've had the Asian flu pandemic, the Spanish flu. That was a deadly, really deadly one. We have AIDS and SARS, the swine flu. You get the picture, etc. To accompany those things, looking back in history, so to speak, we had the great flood of Noah, that supposedly wiped out humanity, except for a few stragglers, and evidently Noah and his family was among them. Come down a little bit, you had the Crusades, where you had the wars between the Christians and the Muslims, and they slaughtered one another. Massive amount of what we call life eliminated. You had the Spanish Inquisition. Remember that? Heavy thing. There were a lot of wars between the English and the French and the Spaniards, usually over Catholicism and Christianity, or, religious wars. Massive amounts of suffering and pain and loss of life, so to speak. You had the Spanish-American War, you had the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the wholesale war that the new peoples of America, they wiped out entire, they massacred the Indians. Okay? We had wholesale slavery, buying and selling black people and making them slaves. We had the war between the states, the Civil War. Lots of bloodshed and loss of life. We had World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam, Desert Storm, the Iraqi invasion, the war against ISIS, and all the related terrorism that went on with those things. And now we have the coronavirus, as though it's something novel. Let me tell you what is not novel about it. All these things that I had just listed and read, these things right here that I made a list of, they're all game scripts. They're scripted into the game. I keep saying the game is difficult. It is fiendishly difficult. We are collectively aware at this moment in what we call time in the game, what we call time, we are aware of a coronavirus. We are not immediately aware of all these other things that seem to have happened in the past. which are actually going on right now. That's another story. But you may have been part of the Crusades and got your head cut off. This is all about experience. It's always been about experience. This game is one of the more difficult experiences because the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition and stuff like we're all in the game, the Matrix game of life, all of that. We programmed it in to make the game difficult, and we succeeded because it is difficult. And it's very hard to wake up from. I understand that. So don't let the coronavirus and the media send you running out to Kmart for 600 rolls of toilet paper. Fear only feeds the matrix. Look at fear as an enemy to be overcome. It's part of the game. You are source. What is there to fear? And the biggest fear that we have is really not the coronavirus or getting sick with it. The underlying fear is the fear of death, which manifests as determined self-preservation. Source Blair, you are eternal, without beginning, without end, just are, beyond space and time. There is no death. Even the Apostle Paul wrote that the last enemy to be overcome is death. So don't let this coronavirus stuff freak you out. Don't. Remember what you are. Know thyself. It opens many windows and doors to start beating the game, where you are the boss. The soul does no longer inform you, you inform it. That doesn't happen when you stop eating meat for 30 days. By all means, do not consume anything that at one time had a heartbeat. That includes clams, seafood, fish. Anything that at one time had a heartbeat, do not consume it. That's the first step that has to be taken once you wake up to the fact that you're playing a game. Immediately your frequency will rise if you make the determination that you are not going to eat meat any longer. Your frequency rises quickly. You won't notice it immediately. Somewhere along 60, 90 days, what starts happening is oh. And then you start playing the game in earnest. And if you are intent on winning the game, if you have set your mind to it. It is a mindset. It is a determination. And you continue. They are rough. Things don't get better overnight. You didn't get in this condition overnight, and you don't get out of it overnight. It's a process, but it doesn't have to be really long and drawn out. Like my 50 years of searching before I ever realized I was playing a game that I had helped create. I'm awake to the game. I've been playing it a while. The game does not play me anymore. I play it. There's a big difference right there. And I am in no hurry for anything to change. It's called contentment. I am aware of the coronavirus, but viruses and the sicknesses associated with them, that occurs in the lower frequencies of the third dimension. That stuff occurs for what we perceive as human beings anyhow. That stuff goes on a third and fourth frequency levels. Once you reach frequency level 5, once you reach frequency level 5, your conditioning starts falling away and insights start coming in force. And soon you realize, yes, I'm aware of the coronavirus, but that's happened. That is not on my frequency level. And that stuff doesn't touch you. And that's just at frequency level 5. You've been there long enough. And you're continually climbing that frequency ladder until in the third dimension, or should I say on the physical plane of the primary matrix, just above the third dimension, is where your fractal is. And when you get your soul body in line and in harmony to be on the frequency level to join your fractal, including the body that's there, that's all working together in harmony. You are awake. The game's still going on, and you really don't care. But you know what? You see the whole thing, and like for me, I asked myself, should I put videos out there about this or should I not? And I knew to do it. So you're listening to it. And you've been listening to me now for 1 hour and 6 minutes, and I'm going to end it there. That's usually about my normal time. So, yeah, don't freak out about the Justinian plague. Watch this video again. Really take to heart what I did my best to explain, as you are not you, but you are Source. When that really is the foundation of your being, so to speak. The game is not nearly the challenge it was before that realization was arrived at. Play to win. Play to win. People don't play sports, which is a game. They don't play to lose. They play to win. They train to win. They work to win. They condition themselves to win. And they play by the rules, because if they don't, they lose. I don't know what I'm going to talk about in my next video. I usually never know what I'm going to talk about until like an hour before the video is made. It's not anything that consumes my mind. Oh, by the way, before I do go here though, I want to give a shout out to two ladies, one from Columbus, Ohio, one from Washington, D.C. I'm here in Pittsburgh. These two ladies are friends, and they decided to meet up in Pittsburgh for whatever their reason, just to meet up. They're friends. But they got in touch with me, and we all sat down and had a cup of coffee, 3-hour cup of coffee, and had a discussion, and it was wonderful. I had a good time. So I'm giving a shout out to you. They are source players. I've never met a source player in this game face to face. That was not part of my script. The only source players I ever saw, I really only know that I've seen one other, and that was on YouTube. My mentor. She and I talk about the very same things. I just come at it from a whole different approach. As I explained to the two ladies that I met here and had coffee with, I explained to them that my approach is different from my mentors. We're both saying the same thing. I just seem to come from a more mystical approach to things. The necessity of understanding that you are source. All the other things that my mentor teaches are true. I know from experience. I heard the words, and I decided, yes, I'm going to do it. And then when the intent is there, the experiences match the intent. That's why they say, watch what you wish for, because you just might get it. Okay, friends. I've covered a lot today. I have. And that is why I always encourage watching videos more than once. I watched when I was brand new to this. I watched over 450 videos, at least 3 times. And some of the videos I watched 10, 15, 20 times. Why? Because I set the intention. I developed the mindset that I am going to win this game. Boop. So, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you get something out of it. I have a comment section. If you have questions, like I said, don't argue with me. I'm not here to argue. But valid questions deserve a valid exploration. When we were in school, the teacher was teaching us things and would have questions. And the teacher would expound upon what it was he was teaching. We'd go, oh, I see. And that way we didn't flunk the test. You will be quizzed on this. So, I'll see you the next time that I see you. May your matrix experience be one of health, prosperity, wealth. It can be whatever you want it to be. In fact, your experience right now is exactly the way you have created it. There's no condemnation, nor is there judgment. I am not a victim. I am Source, playing a game that I created. What else am I to do? So, peace be with you. I'll see you in my next video. Over and out.